Welcome to the Goddesses of Social Work podcast, hosted by Renita Ray Davis, licensed clinical social worker, board approved social work clinical supervisor, and facilitator of the Goddesses of Social Work supervision community. Join us as we travel through the social work journeys told by the Goddesses of Social Work community members, past and present, as they make their way toward clinical licensure.
Welcome to the Goddesses of Social Work podcast. I'm your host, Renita Ray Davis, and today we're joined by someone whose work is saving lives and shaping the future of young people across the country. Our guest, Iuri Melo, is a licensed clinical social worker with 20 years of experience, the proud father of 5, and the co-founder of SchoolPulse, a nationwide student support service that brings encouragement, positivity, and mental health tools directly to students, parents, and educators through text and email. After his community was shaken by several teen suicides, Iuri co-created SchoolPulse in 2017 to offer proactive, consistent support. Today, SchoolPulse reaches over 300 schools in 25 plus states, delivering weekly videos, growth mindset messages, and tools that help students feel seen, supported, and hopeful. He's also the author of Mind Over Gray Matter and the teen bestseller Know Thy Selfie, and the developer of adventure based therapy. At the heart of all of this is his mission to bless the human family through kindness, psychology, and presence. Iuri, welcome to the podcast. I'm so honored to have you here.
Renita, I've got like goosebumps right now because you are just so awesome. And like we started our show with the prayer, you've literally just made my day. I am so
Mm.
excited to be here and I'm honored to just be in your awesome aura and presence. So let's see where we go today. I'm excited to see where we end up.
I love this thing, Yuri. I woke up this morning like I usually like to talk because I have something to say and I think people want to hear it, but I can't wait to hear everything you have to say because just looking at your website, looking at your YouTube channel, reading some of the blurbs about your books, you have so much wisdom. And I'm just like, I want to just take it all in. I'm a sponge today, so I can't wait to take it all in. But I was telling you before we hit record, the reason I started the Gods of Social Work podcast was because I love listening to the stories of social workers and their journeys of how they got here and where they're going to and through social work. So you've been a social worker for over 20 years, like me. What's your story? What's your social work journey?
Oh my gosh. Interestingly enough, sometimes people have really good stories, right? Like, or things that maybe happen in their life or that they've kind of made this connection that then kind of launched them into this career. And I dare say that for me, I don't know if it was quite that way, but I guess let me just take you back to kind of my initial phase when I first went to college. I was actually studying computer information systems, if you can believe that. And that just wasn't very interesting to me. Honestly, I don't think I was trying very hard. I was probably failing out of those classes. I did have a psychology class that was pretty interesting. The instructor was kind of a quirky guy, and I liked him. And then after that, I actually had the opportunity to kind of do some humanitarian, kind of missionary religious work for a couple of years. And I would say that it was really at that point um, when I really started to connect with people a little bit more deeply, and I really just fell in love with people. I don't know how else to say it. Like, I really just enjoy people. I enjoy the craziness, the goodness, like their mistakes don't bother me. And so I think that kind of grew in me. And then when I left there and kind of continue on with my college career, my sister, my oldest sister, who had gone to school for psychology. And I thought to myself, huh, like maybe that would be of interest to me. And I kind of began on that trail, got my bachelor's, got my master's. And I guess I would say this. I I don't know if I pursued psychology or social work from this like this is what I'm going to do in my life, but I've engaged in it. I've invested in it. and I've definitely fallen in love with it over these years. And the more that I have invested, the more I have enjoyed it, right? Not just for me as an individual, but as a dad. Even in my spiritual and religious practice, I just love that interaction between the two. And so I don't know if I have a really fabulous story. I mean, I think everybody's got their own trauma and their own story. Um, and I feel like I was a pretty aloof child. I don't think I had this like really clear direction. I think I was out picking daisies all the time, to be honest. But I was fortunate enough to land in a field that just has so much depth. It's got so much richness. And I think it's added to my life in a really positive way.
I love that because it feels like you're in relationship with social work. And so, and it's been reciprocal. As much as you've invested, it's given back to you. And my favorite thing to say is I'm still in love. 26 years later, I've been a social worker 26 years. And I say 26 years later, I'm still in love with social work. And so for you to like say, I've fallen in love with it, you're one of my people.
Right on, Renita. No,
You're
it,
one of
it it
my
has been.
people.
It's been such a good it's been, I mean, obviously there's challenges here and there, and I'm often asked, probably the question that I'm most asked, and it's probably the same for you as well, is people always ask me, how can you sit and listen to people's problems every day, right? And I think in their mind they have this kind of, maybe it's a misperception, I don't know, that that therapy somehow is this really like, I don't know, negative, dark, where I'm kind of just like receiving and absorbing people's negative energy. But man, I tell them like, man, you couldn't be more mistaken. Like therapy is exciting. Like it is just so filled with like optimism and goals and objectives and like we're moving forward. Like whatever's happened in the past, good, bad, or ugly, like we're just gonna grow. We're gonna take all that stuff, we're gonna synthesize it, and we're gonna come out bigger, better, stronger, wiser. So for me, like therapy, in addition, right, to some of the nitty-gritty details of people's lives that I'm so honored to be a part of. But man, our goal is always so positive. It's so optimistic. So I leave feeling grateful, number one, but also connected. I feel leaving connected to people, but I also leave feeling encouraged, like inspired, motivated. And so it's not a negative experience for me. After 20 years, like you said, 21 years, it's stayed that in that positive element for me. And I'm sure that you could probably say the same.
I absolutely do. I was telling someone recently, feels like today, but I don't know. I am enamored by human behavior. Like I love to see human behavior, and that's what it sounds like. You love to witness, be able to witness people think that they're going through the dark night of the soul, and they might be, but then to be able to witness them get to the other side of it, isn't that feels like the most beautiful thing to be able to witness, and I too am honored to be able to witness that moment by moment they think they're going through a really tough time. They are going through a really tough time, and then if they stick it out, on the other side of that is this beautiful, that's why I went through all of that energy. And I think as therapists, getting to witness that is one of the most beautiful things that we could do in this lifetime.
Yeah, and I feel
Yeah.
like sometimes my only goal, especially like during like the initial session, right? Whenever we meet somebody for the first time. By the way, those are my absolute favorite. Like I just love to get to know people and to jump into their lives a little bit as much as they allow me to. But I love the feeling, and I ask almost at the end of every time when I meet somebody, I always ask them like, so what was this like for you? Like, what was this therapy session like? I mean, was it terrible? Was it good? I mean, how do you feel right now? And I would say that the overwhelming response is when people say, I honestly, I feel relieved, unburdened, optimistic, hopeful. Man, those words are just like money, right? Because that's exactly what I'm hoping they're leaving with is a sense of like, man, like things can get better, right? And that hope and optimism is fuel, right? That's what that is to our soul, is that allows us to continue on and persevere, hopefully, right? Potentially even a little bit better than we were before. So for me, that's key is I want people to experience that. And oftentimes, I'll be honest, it's not because of anything that I'm saying or I'm not dropping some like cognitive like pearl of great price on their lap. It's simply because they're meeting with me in this really special place where they can speak like things that they've never uttered sometimes for decades, but they can speak them, they can feel cared for, listened to deeply, and that in and of itself is so healing. It can be so healing for those individuals. It can be such a special place. And so that's what I try to do. I'm sure, Renita, that's exactly what you try to do as well, is how can I make this place just so special for people so that it's almost sacred for them. I just love that.
It is a sacred space. I think I think the container that we create, and we can use object relations theory too, but the container we create as clinicians, as practitioners, is absolutely a sacred space. And I even want to extend it a little bit, Yuri, because I told you I got to listen to some of the videos on your website. And even if you can't get into your chair, whether it be virtually or your therapy chair, your videos. Now I think I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but you've
Sure.
created a sacred space even with what you're speaking over the people who are listening to those videos, your hope for them, your desire for them, even because sometimes we can't do it for ourselves, right? And here I am, I'm a clinician, and but I sat in when I listened to your videos, and I was like, I needed that. I needed that optimism. I needed that hope. And so I absolutely can tell you're doing it with your clients that you're seeing, but you're also giving that gift to the world through your videos and your website and your offerings that you're giving that aren't just in the clinical space. You've extended that sacred space on other mediums as well.
Yeah, I really love those. Those are really fun for me. I love to do a couple. I love to create the content for that. And then I love to deliver it. It's just fun and it's been fun to kind of practice that skill a little bit. But that's exactly my goal, right? Is we're trying to reach out, right, to these secondary age students, right? And they're a tough crowd. They can be. I actually adore that crowd. I think when I was a young boy or an adolescent, I think the energy that you feel when you walk into a junior high or a middle school or a high school, I think that kind of just intensity it probably intimidated me a little bit. I was just a little bit insecure or whatever. And now I'm old and maybe a little jaded or whatever. But when I walk into those environments, man, there is just something special in there. And so part of what I knowing that there is all of this incredible energy, absolutely knowing that our children are just beyond extraordinary, but knowing that they're struggling too. And I think that that's something, right, that when we look at some of the metrics today, right, like whether it be like children who are persistently sad or who are having suicidal ideation or who have attempted suicide or who are self-harming or who feel lonely or who feel disconnected or who are being, rage baited by media, etc. We know that there's some real legitimate challenges in their lives. And part of these videos, right, part of this program that we're trying to bring to schools and school districts throughout the country is we just want to provide them with the kinds of tools that will allow them to create some mental fitness because my belief, right, is that our psychology is everything, right? The way that we interpret the events in our lives matters more than the events themselves, right? And so if we can arm our kids and ourselves, really, right? Because we're just bigger kids, but if we can arm those kids with a wonderful way to look, a better way, I should say, to look at the world, then I think they can interpret that and lead better lives and actually help them to strengthen the protective factors that can protect them from things like anxiety or depression or panic or suicide, right? Which is what we all want. And I knock on wood, I realize that we can't possibly stop all those things because there's lots of factors, right? Including some really traumatic ones, and of course our own biology, right? We have to manage that as well. But I also, like you said, Renita, I believe like that we do have this incredible ability with time, with experience, sometimes with the right people, to really develop a wonderful perspective that allows us to really take so much more out of life. And so I love making those videos. I love to, because a lot of the titles for those videos, and by the way, I'll share a link with you that you can share with your listeners, and they can go and look at all of them um, for free. Like, and you don't have to put in an email or anything like that. They're just there. They're available to you. You can tap into them anytime that you wish. But my goal is exactly that. I just want to inspire. Like, I just want to inspire. I want to motivate them. I want them to feel like they've got a reason for what they're doing. Because when I talk to schools, one of their biggest issues that administrators or school counselors or school social workers, what they tell me is they're just constantly getting a sense of apathy from their students. There's just like I just don't care. I don't see a reason, right? And by the way, like there's nothing new there, right? From the days of Socrates and Plato to now, like we've all talked about the teenage years, right? I'm not intimidated by teenagers, but we all kind of, have that love-hate relationship between school or what we're doing. Um, but I just know that that's something that a lot of educators are telling me, like, man, Yuri, it's really difficult to get youth to participate, to engage, to get them to be part of the school culture. And so part of those videos is really to get them not only to succeed academically, to develop an awesome psychology, great relationships, but also to give them a sense of meaning and purpose to what they're doing so that they don't feel like they're just wasting their time, which of course they're not. We all know that, and I think that they know that too. It's just, they got to resist a little bit. It's part of their vibe. It's part of their aura. It's what they do. I love it. I love it
It's
about them.
part of their developmental story. That's where they
That's
are.
true. That's true. They have to
hmm
differentiate, right? They have to
hmm
do that. And so I think once you realize that, I hope as us, for adults or educators, or like maybe we'll be less offended by some of their resistance by perhaps recognizing that they're doing exactly what they should be doing. It just feels a little conflictual. There's some conflict there and some resistance.
Absolutely. I love this. And it's a great segue to my next question. You are the proud father to five, which one is my favorite number, but to five amazing human beings. How has parenthood shaped the way you see young people and the challenges they face?
I will say um, my children have brought me so much joy, Renita, and it's like a giddy excitement. Um, when I greet them, in the morning, their groggy selves that are like, cruising down the stairs and, you know, um, to the time that I put them to bed at night. And of course now, I'm a grandpa as of like a year and a little bit ago. So I've got a daughter that's, 25, one that's 23. I've got two young men in the middle that are 19 and 18, and then a 14-year-old girl at home who is just rad, rad, rad. Um, and so I'm just so unbelievably grateful for them. I, I that's really it's a question that I probably need to give a little bit more thought to. Um, but to say that they have impacted every possible area of my life and who I am as an individual would just probably be an understatement. They're just so meaningful to me. My life is so much better because they're in it. Like it just I don't even know. And I also have to say here, by the way, because just how fortunate I am. Like I don't even know why that is. Like my kids are just awesome. But I recognize that that's not how it is for everyone too. And so I don't want to be like, well, I did this and that and the other, because I don't know. I don't even know. I don't know if I'm deserving of that. I don't know if I did something particularly. I just know that I'm incredibly fortunate,
Yuri, I think it
and
just
grateful.
is what it is,
It
isn't
just
it?
is what it is.
It
It
just
just is
is
what it
what,
is.
because I have some incredible kids too. And my youngest, he's 22, he says, "Why did you have children? Because you could have been," because he thinks if I hadn't, I would have been some superstar somewhere, right? And I was like, "But you guys have made my life so much better being in it." And I think because we do have that gratitude towards our kids, that we do get to see it mirrored back to us about how great of human beings they are. So I love that you are like, I don't know how I got this blessed, but I am.
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
don't know how
Yeah,
I feel the
yeah,
same
yeah.
way. I'm gonna transition and pivot
Let's do it.
just a little. We're gonna talk a little bit about School Pulse, and it was actually born out of tragedy after several teen suicides in your community. Can you share a bit about those early
I,
conversations and what it was like to respond with action?
I would. Yeah, so that was 2017. And Renita, we were just talking a little bit about this. I honestly live in just a beautiful community, and not just beautiful as in like the location. It's just a lovely community of good people who are connected and involved and part of, you know, communities of just support. But in 2017, yeah, we had 7 students in our community that took their life by suicide, like in our high schools and middle schools. Um, and a good friend of mine who was a principal at one of the high schools. In fact, my 2 older girls were going to that high school, and they had lost 2 students to suicide that year. He just came to me, and if you can imagine just the amount of pressure, right, that you would be under as a principal, right? Not just from the community, from the parents, from the district. And according to him, these students were just not on his radar. Like they were just great kids. But anyways, he reached out to me. By then, I had written a couple of books, and I think had done even some presentations at his school. And so he reached out to me and said, "Hey, Yuri, can we just talk, man? I feel like everything that I have at my disposal are just reactive things. It's almost like I'm passively waiting for crisis to happen, and then we just basically try to respond, right? We try to do the best we can to kind of provide some sort of an intervention or reaction." And what he really wanted to do is he wanted to be more proactive, he wanted to be more engaged, and he wanted to provide a little bit more education. And so him and I would kind of have these early morning kind of meetings where I would come and visit him at his office, or he would come over to my office. And but as time went on, he was busy, very busy. I was very busy with my own private practice at the time. And later on, I ended up meeting with the other co-founder of SchoolPulse, Trent Staley, who is a genius software engineer. And as we kind of conversed about these kind of just random business ideas, he said, "Hey, let's do something about that. I really want to build tech for good." And so within not very long, he had kind of built the software foundation. I had kind of worked on the psychology, and we began to proactively text students. At that point, that's all that we were doing. We would proactively text students once a week. We started at that high school. And when the students we were just doing like these little questionnaires, like, "Hey, how are you doing today?" 1 through 4, a little Likert scale. And the students would respond with the number. And then I had written out hundreds of just these little canned messages, right? And that number, when they would click that, it would kick back a response like, "Hey, sorry to hear that your day isn't going well. Try this," right? And it was very beginning, very simplistic, very rudimentary. And a couple of years into this, Trent Staley, the co-founder, said, "Hey, these kids are like starting to talk back. They want to talk back over text." And so he suggested that what do you think if we started to provide some live support? And so we did. And when we began to provide some live support back to these students, not only did we find out like that these students are just awesome, amazing, but we also found out that they were going through some really challenging things, right? Kids who were losing kids who were losing parents, whose parents were divorcing, who they were actively suicidal, struggling with substance abuse. They reported physical, sexual, other types of abuse. And we were just able to provide support to those students, and more importantly, to connect or encourage a connection back to their families or to professionals at the school or to other local resources where they could help. And so we then began to kind of grow and expand a little bit. It's slow. Doing business with schools is challenging. Like, schools are very, very busy and overwhelmed. They don't want to do one more thing. And so we really tried to create a suite of services, right, that would address their problems, the things that they're telling us, like, we are overwhelmed, we're underserved, we don't have the resources needed to support these students. And so we basically decided, well, what if we created a series of tools that can address your problems and concerns, but do so in a way that's non-burdensome? And so that's what our email campaigns that we manage 100%. That's where our live, real people text-based support, we handle that for schools. And we're not there to replace. We really are just there to, the moment we walk into a school, we want to multiply their ability to support their students. And we can do that. And we can do that after hours, after they've gone to sleep, over the holidays, over the summer. And so that's how we do that. And then, of course, in addition to that, we've created these fun videos. We call them, these activities, right? That are meant to be shown proactively to the students, that in an effort, right, to elevate their psychology, their mindset, and really to provide them with the kinds of principles, skills, and strategies that have been proven to improve, right, their optimism, their happiness, their joy, their academic performance, their persistence. And of course, these are things that every administrator, that every counselor, every parent really wants. And we just try to deliver that in a really benign way. We have to really be ambassadors, because we are very respectful of parents and respectful of their rights to educate their children in whatever way they see fit. And yet, so we have to provide the kind of content to children, right, that is benign, it's packed with goodness and enthusiasm, but that offers that same respect to parents, that so that they can educate their kids in the way that they do. And I feel like we've worked really hard to do that. And I hope with everything, we've met with thousands of parents and community and, and parent boards and community boards throughout the country. And I think we've done a really good job at walking that fine line of, can we provide these awesome tools for your kids while not interfering, in the wonderful things that you would like to teach them yourself? And I think we've done a good job at that.
And that is such a fine line, because I'm thinking about sex education in the school, and how much do we share with students and how much is the parents' responsibility. And these topics you're talking about, depression, anxiety, suicidality, are all in that kind of sensitive, how much do we share and or give to the students, and how much should be left to the parent to handle. So it is such a fine line. You've reached more than 300 schools across 25 states. What has surprised you the most about the way the students in schools are responding?
I think for me, the most surprising thing initially was just how quickly, like, we do lots of ways where we kind of roll out to a school. We actually put up these like big QR codes in the hallways, or we do a virtual assembly, and students just grab their phone, they scan a QR code, and a literal text drops on their, like, they don't have to download an app, they don't have to create a username or password. and a text will just come to their phone that says, "Hey, welcome to SchoolPulse. How you doing?" Right? And then from there on, we start on this campaign. Every Tuesday and every Friday, we deliver our student success videos. That's what we call them. And then other engaging and other engaging content. And when they respond or interact, they're met by live people um, who communicate with them, who support them, who encourage them. And once again, who do everything in our power, right, to connect those kids back to their home, to their primary network. That's where they need to be, to the professionals at the school and other things. But I think what's impressed me the most, or what surprised me the most, is how quickly, a student will come on and immediately kind of just dive into some of the things that are happening in their lives. And of course, for us, our goal is to just greet them with enthusiasm, express gratitude for them being there, seek to understand who they are, and if necessary, we might throw down a suggestion like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Or and of course, our goal, like I said, is always, are your parents aware? Do they know about that? Have you had a chance to speak to them about that? Would you be willing to speak to them about that? Right? So that's one of the things I feel has really surprised me is how quickly once students realize that it's private, right? That there's anonymity, that it's safe, how quickly students will open up and talk about, anything, right? From I'm really stressed out about this class to having problems with my friends, or this is happening at home, or man, I'm not doing well. I'm sad. I'm angry. I'm anxious, whatever it is. And our goal, by the way, I always tell people we're a positive psychology service. Our goal is is not clinical, meaning we're not doing therapy over text. It's very important to clarify that, right? Our goal is really to greet students with excitement and enthusiasm and to provide them, and we can actually drop those videos that you were listening to, Renita, like right on the text. Like, hey, we would love to hear your thoughts about this specific video, and we drop it on there. Tell us what you think. And the kids can watch it and, of course, communicate back or share it with their parents. Um, but I think that's been one of the areas that I feel has been really interesting is just the speed with which once they feel safe, how quickly they're willing to kind of open up. And then just that simple act, right, of expressing, communicating, being heard and understood, how quickly that de-escalates that emotional intensity that they were experiencing. And we can actually measure that. I won't go into that, but we actually have an algorithm that measures the sentiment in that text. And that's how we can actually know that our service is effective, is we measure. And when students engage with our positive interaction team, we're able to raise those sentiment levels 50 to 60%, which is just absolutely awesome. And so it's fun to be able to measure that.
I was wondering if you were able, so I'm glad you answered that. But I love that you call your positive interaction team. And while you were talking, I was thinking of Toni Morrison one time told Oprah Winfrey, I think it was Toni Morrison, my eyes light up when my kid walks into the room, right? And this is what this feels like. It's almost like nobody's eyes have lit up when they walk into a room, but when they text SchoolPulse, somebody is lighting up. Your positive interaction team, somebody is lighting up because they reached out and are communicating and they're feeling someone is actually excited that I'm here and present. And it almost sounds like you have a formula
We
to meet
do.
them. I heard it. I was loving
Yeah,
it. Do
that's
you want to
it.
repeat it again?
You bet. We actually created an acronym for it. It's not the greatest acronym, but it's GT MASS. And G stands for greet with enthusiasm. So, I mean, and we kind of have this motto as part of our pit crew, is what we call it, our positive interaction team. And that is that every interaction is a positive interaction, right? Whether that student comes in and says, "Hey, I have a question," or that student comes in and says, "F you guys, I hate this," or "I hate that," or "You guys are this or that or the other." That's okay. We're not bothered by that. We're going to greet you with enthusiasm. T stands for we're going to thank you for being there. M stands for match. We're going to match you where you are. Like we're just going to match where you are, right? A is we're going to ask questions, right? So once again, we're not dropping advice or suggestions. S stands we're going to seek to understand, right? Seek that first. And then the very last one is suggestions. We might have a suggestion. And if we do, we're going to ask for permission before we give it as well. So and I feel like that's even a good clinical tool for us, right? Is let's make sure, or even as parents, I would say, think about that as a parent, right? To kind of just do all of those things before we jump into, let me discipline, let me hold you accountable, let me tell you what to do. Let's do all of those before we enter that final realm there. So anyways,
That
that's one of our little tools. You heard it. Yeah,
I
you picked it
love
out.
it.
That's good.
Yes, I love it. I was like, well, I hope he repeats that. So I love it. We could talk about School Pulse some more, but I really wanted to be able to transition into the two books that you wrote, because when I went to look them up, and I am gonna buy them, but when I went to look them up, I was super impressed. I'm gonna say you've written Mind Over Gray Matter, and that's gray, GREY. So literally our brain
Uh-huh.
matter. And I want to come back to that because I love the brain. My sister has me in
Yeah.
love with the brain.
Uh-huh.
But I really want, I went and I looked up Know Thyselfie, which is one of your books, tips, tricks, and tools for an awesome life. And in your Amazon blurb description of this book, one of the last sentences in there really like stuck with me. And you say, within these pages are the tools you need to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life and to learn the most critical of disciplines, the art of happiness. And one I had seen already that you've written, so it must be one of your mantras, to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life. I want to hear more about where that came from. And then I love the art of happiness as a discipline, and want to hear more about what that would look like. So
I would love to tell you, but first I have to give credit where credit is due. Um, so that statement specifically, the live deep or live deeply and suck out all the marrow of life. That's Henry David Thoreau, right? Kind of an American, philosopher, right? And he wrote Walden, right? So this is when he kind of left the world in a sense, kind of and lived by Walden Pond. And he just has this unbelievable quote that did pretty much the same thing that it did to you. It just stirred something in me at a young age, actually. And a lot of you will remember this. My guess is that you will, or maybe you will, but a long time ago there was a movie called Dead Poets Society. And this fabulous teacher, Robin Williams, right, is this kind of literature teacher, right? And he would stand up on the desk and, oh, Captain, my Captain, and but that's one of the things that he said, and there is he quoted Henry David Thoreau when he went out and lived in the woods, right? And it talks about how he went to live there, to live what was life and not what wasn't life, right? And to, basically to take all of the things of life and kind of bring them down to these essentials, uh, in part because he wanted to make sure that he was living deeply, right, and sucking out all the marrow of life. And it moved in me then as a young teenager boy. And that quote has just stayed with me. It's just inspired me. And then specifically the other one about happiness as a discipline or as an art. I have to give credit as well there's a great book that I read also in my young adult years called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. And there's kind of this character in that book, kind of an abstract, sort of mythical character named Socrates, which is kind of, but somewhere in there, he talks about happiness being the ultimate discipline, right? And what I like specifically about that concept, right? And this actually meshes in really nicely with positive psychology, because positive psychology is kind of a change, right, from the previous waves of psychology, right? Namely, like psychodynamic, behavioral, humanistic. Humanistic is a little bit more close towards positive psychology, but instead of the study of human deficiencies, right, that we see in this, the DSM-5. We've written 5 versions of this, right, throughout the years, where we've pretty much identified all the possible wrong things that could go with us. Positive psychology is kind of turning the corner a little bit and is really asking a better, well, I would say just as important of a question, which is what's right with us? How can we feel happier, right? What are the things that we need to do to find meaning, to find purpose, to experience more joy in our lives? And so positive psychology is the study of happiness as a skill, right? Not as just something that either happens around us or that, we either feel happy or we don't. I'm either a happy person or I'm not, or I'm an optimist or a pessimist. So the idea is that happiness, right, can be something that we learn. It's a skill, right? It's a discipline, right, that we can learn and practice and become better and better at. And so those are 2 quotes that like I said, that have just moved me ever since I was young. I mean, I'm almost 50 now, but I'll be 50 in a couple of weeks. And so they've been with me for a long time. Yeah.
Happy early birthday.
Thanks, Renita.
September
You're
or
the best.
October?
September 28th.
Ah, and you're a Virgo. Happy.
Yeah. I'm a Libra. I'm a
You're
Libra,
a
I think.
Libra. Oh, yes, that's right. Because we'll go over the equinox. You are a
That's right.
September Libra. Yes,
Yeah.
and this feels really good. I know I'm going into my, but the fact how you relate to people, and I think when I first started talking about the videos, the energy I wanted to express was you can tell you love people. You can, even though I know those videos are for young people, as a grown adult who has hit the 50 mark, I was like, you can tell your love for people is so woven through that, and I just feel so very Libran, so very your love for people is evident through those videos. But um, I was gonna ask you about positive psychology. I remember I love that, and I'm wondering because we did you're old school social worker like me, 20 years in the game, right? We didn't learn positive psychology in social work. And so how are you able to, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of allow yourself to integrate this new way of thinking about how to show up for our clients with how we were trained as social workers.
And the reality is, Renita, you've been doing positive psychology work ever since you started. Like, I mean, right, we want to build on the strengths of clients, right? We create objectives for them, right? I mean, we create goals with them. And we've talked about already, right, that therapy can be this just incredibly invigorating and motivating environment. That's really what it is. But particularly with those, I think what's interesting, right? I think with positive psychology, it's almost just a kind of addressing the other side. So, for example, let's say you've got a client, that comes in and they're suffering, right? They're suffering with anxiety or depression or obsessive compulsive disorder, or they're in a crazy relationship, or maybe they're struggling with substance abuse or other habits, right, that are maybe creating havoc in their life a little bit. And part of our role, right, as healers, right, is trying to be medicine, back to your prayer, like trying to be medicine, right, is we want to relieve suffering, right? I mean, we want to do that, right? We want those people to get out of that negative momentum and bring them at least to where they can function a little bit better. Positive psychology, I would say, is the next step, right? Is moving them all the way over to the other side, because I feel like it's one thing to help someone to not feel depressed, and I think it's another to teach someone to be happy or to feel joy or to cultivate and nurture the kinds of things in their life, right, that will create more joy and insulate them from more problems in the past as well, right? And of course, those things include nurturing positive relationships, right? We know that positive relationships multiply our joys and divide our sorrows, right? We know that having those relationships are just incredible. Like they're good for our confidence, they're good for our optimism, they're good. We suffer less, we're less depressed, we're less anxious when we have great relationships. And so part of these positive psychology principles, right, is leaning in to this idea of, wow, if this is such a key part of my overall, in fact, it's the most important factor for long-term happiness, then I want to invest time, skill, energy into nurturing these relationships because that is such a part of me learning the discipline of happiness. And of course, there are other things, right? It's, making sure that we are experiencing positive feelings in your life. So I talk about those as renewable sources of happiness. And so think about in your own life, kind of like how, sun, water, wind, those are renewable sources of energy, right? So renewable sources of happiness are things that you can tap into your life that when you do, they inspire feelings of joy, of wellness, whether it's me playing the guitar or climbing, or honestly, even going to work or going for a run in the morning with my friends, or meditating or reading a great book or watching my favorite show or spending time with my wife or with my kids. And then recognizing, right, that we want to fill our life with those kinds of experiences that promote positive feelings. And I know that sounds so like, no, duh, Iuri, but we don't do that, right? And so recognizing those sources and then sprinkling our life with those is one. And of course, doing things that are meaningful, um, creating or participating in activities that are, that create a source of achievement, being part of communities that help you to gain a better sense of meaning and purpose. Those things are just so unbelievably good. And in fact, we could go into some of that discussion, like when people talk about kind of loneliness being this significant epidemic of our time. And we could talk about, some of the impact that phones have had with that. And I think that there is for sure. But also, people have become, I think, increasingly individualistic and have left some of those communities um, that are really so good for us. And so, anyways, there's lots of those things that constitute the discipline or the art of happiness, right? That we can deliberately and intentionally begin to add to our lives.
I love that was such a great answer. And I
Thank you.
and I don't know if I want to be as elegant as you in my response because I was thinking, I have been thinking recently, I have in my private practice, I've been a social worker for over 26 years. So the majority of that work has been in the community. And in community work, the focus is on finding, like you said, showing me the DSM-5, getting that DSM-5 and finding out what the problem is, and then helping and then releasing. Having the honor of being able to be in private practice, I've had long-term clients, whereas in the community, we're doing
Yeah.
solution focus. We're out in 12 weeks. We got you through your crisis. Having the honor to sit and hold space week after week with people who have been with me 4 and 5 years, it's almost like they were like, okay, I'm over my crisis. Can I still come to therapy? And what we've gotten is exactly what you are talking about. Okay, now there's good stuff happening. I've learned to manage my emotions and regulate them well. And I'm practicing that skill set, a skill set I may not have practiced for the first 30, 40, 50 years of my life. What Having a guide, which is what I think I am, to
Sure.
help guide me through these positive experiences. So, one, I don't fall back into old habits and sabotage them, but also keep practicing and reminding myself that I'm worthy of having these happy experiences and guiding me through this positive psychology is what I think is what's made therapy, being a practitioner, so much fun for me. Is we Yes, all this trauma did happen. We don't deny it, but yes, we acknowledge and we sat with it. But now we have the remainder of our life to happen, and we can set some intentions of how do I want to show up? What do I want to experience? And it looks like joy, bliss, connectivity, all of those things. And to me, the practitioner that I am, is I'm that guide now to help you navigate that in a way that feels really good, really fulfilling, really evolving for you. And so that's how I just saw your description of positive psychology.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that as you were talking, I'm reminded of, and I have to preface this by I don't know if this story is actually true because I've heard it in a couple of locations, and I've kind of tried to figure out, is this what happened? But I just have to tell you, it's a great story about Nelson Mandela. Of course, during that whole time when he was kind of, leading a revolution and trying to do it in a peaceful way, and then was imprisoned, unjustly for 27 or 37 years in that hard labor camp. I don't recall how many years. But anyways, he's released, becomes president of the country. And at one point, he's having an interview with a reporter who asks him the question, how did you deal with the injustice? How did you deal with the suffering? And Nelson Mandela's response is, he says, "What suffering?" He says, "It was preparation," right? And so it's such a powerful. So once again, think of mindset, right? When we have a mindset like that, we almost become invincible because, and I say that cautiously and with a lot of respect, because I wouldn't ever dare try to minimize someone's suffering or trauma. And I know that there are people there that I can't even touch or comprehend what they've been through. And I would never try to insult them by just giving them some simplistic answer like, hey, just get over it or turn it for your benefit. And I realize it's not that simple, but I do want to positively plant that concept in their mind that whatever has occurred in their life can be consecrated for their good. And that may take a long time. That may take a long time. And like I said, I always try to do it so respectfully because I would never want to offend them. Um, but I also want them to lead courageously forward, right? Potentially with Nelson Mandela's idea of every moment prepares us for the very next moment, right? And I feel like that psychology can be so empowering, filled with optimism instead of pessimism, hopelessness, and helplessness, right? Where we just feel victimized and helpless by the things that have occurred in our lives. But anyways, I'm preaching to the choir. I'm
I,
sure this is all stuff that you're just
no,
like
but you know
rocking
what?
and rolling with your people.
I absolutely love it, and I have to add again, and then I'll ask the last couple of questions. But I just finished the book for our Goddesses Social Work Book Club, "What Happened to You" by Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Bruce
Mm,
Perry. And at the end, Oprah had me in a Miss Winfrey had me in a chokehold about crying, but she at the end of the book, and I was listening to it on Audible, but she says, what if all that happened to you happened for you? She
yeah,
says,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
all of her trauma, she would not be the woman she was had she not experienced all of that trauma. So leaning into your
Yes.
Nelson Mandela point and then extending it with what Oprah Winfrey's saying, what if everything that happened to you happened for you? And so I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
I'm with you. I am with you there. What if it all happened for you so you can come to the other side? And I think that is what my role and your role, and some of those of us who are choosing to lean into the positive psychology discipline is to like, okay, yeah, now we understand what happened to you. What if it happened for you? And how can we use that to make
Oof.
sure you live a quality life? Yeah. So
That is a
good.
powerful idea. Yeah.
I think that everybody should read. Just like I wrote down The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, I'm going to read it. I also think everybody, especially clinicians, should read the book "What Happened to You" by Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Bruce
I'm going to read
Perry.
that.
Yeah, I enjoyed listening to it. I would listen to it on my walk, so it was really good. But Iuri, oh my goodness, this was I knew it was going to be an amazing interview. I felt so honored that however we met in order to do this, and it has not disappointed. But I always ask this question of social workers: what do you feel like has changed the most for you since you became a social worker? Like, what value about social work, what belief about social work has changed the most for you um, since you started your journey off as a social worker?
I would say, um, I think I think this is something that I brought in a little bit that I think expanded. Um, and I'm actually going to tie it in spiritually a little bit, if you don't mind. So I feel like sometimes I feel like so sometimes I'll say like, God is the most misunderstood being in the universe. I think in part because we can't help but kind of picture, a heavenly being or a heavenly father or heavenly parents, somehow related to our own, right? We kind of have to have a little bit of a starting point. And I think sometimes we look at a heavenly parent as or God, right, is almost kind of a Zeus-like character, right? He's up there with lightning bolts and kind of just, relishing and punishing or, catching us in our sins and I think something that I've realized, I hope it's true, right? Because it's not about my truth. I really want to try to connect in with things that are real. But I think something that I hope is true is that God is less interested in our mistakes and really interested in our effort. Um, and I don't think he's like, "Ooh, Iuri, what are you doing there?" What I do think is he's really excited when I do make my mistakes, but I give it another go. And I really feel like he's like, "Yes, like let's go." He probably doesn't use those words, but in my mind, I feel like, and this goes back to that idea of just people's mistakes don't scare me, right? All the way from the most crazy things, right, that people have done to themselves or to other people. Like I'm just not that interested in their errors. What I am interested in is, right, man, how are we gonna like take all of that, right, synthesize it like we talked about, right? And it's gonna come out and it's going to be better. You're gonna be wiser, you're gonna be stronger, you're gonna be more sympathetic, empathetic, more filled with wisdom. And so for me, I feel like that's something that over the past 20 years, it's just grown more and more, is just being at ease with people who are really just struggling with their own behavior. Some of the things really challenging things, but just really being not scared of like, oh my gosh, you did what? Like, no, like, just like, I am so honored that you would even tell me that. Like, and then let's move in a direction that will actually, right, encourage and invite more joy, more meaning, better relationships. And so I think that's something that the last 20 years have helped me to learn more and more of. So, anyways.
I love that. And you know what? My Sagittarius moon just loves everything that you have said. And, I'm going to continue to add if I can, if it fits. I have a belief system that the universe is loving and kind. And I also believe that we are all sparks of the divine. So if you believe, or if I believe that the universe is loving and kind, I'm going to see more of that, right? And so you might have a belief system about God or the universe or spirit or that's one, but then we get to reflect that in each other. And so if your belief is God is more interested in our effort than he is our mistake, that is your spark of the divine that then gets mirrored in the people that you're serving and seeing and interacting with. That I'm just interested in your effort. I'm just interested in your effort. And so your truth is your truth. Absolutely. It doesn't negate other people's truth. It just is that's the spark the divine gave you, and you get to mirror it back to other people who need to know that their effort matters, who need to know that their effort matters. And so my little spark of the divine is that the universe is loving and kind. And so the people I interact with also get mirrored back to me that the universe is loving and kind. And that is what you did for me today. With all of this wisdom, you sat at my table. My Sagittarius moon loves this. Love this. I almost cussed, but loves it. Because to me, the universe is loving and kind. And this conversation was such a gift to me. And you
Wow,
mirrored
thank
that
you.
back to me.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So thank you. Thank you. And so, my final question, and
let's hear it.
I love it, but what encouragement, because you are so full of wisdom. And so, for the social workers, the audience, the teenagers listening today, what encouragement or wisdom would you like to offer us?
What I would say to them, and I would say it to myself, because I feel like so many times um, we're driven by fear. Like fear is tough. It's a tough emotion. And I think sometimes as parents we preach fear, and I don't like that. So what I would say to my to my teens, to my older daughters, to my younger daughter, as I would say, like go into the world with confidence, right? Like just go with courage. Um, with that understanding, right? That whatever occurs, right? That all of those moments, right, will prepare you for the next moments, right? That all of those circumstances, right, can be consecrated, can help to make you holy as a person, right? Whether we make the absolute best choice or the most ridiculous mistake, right? Or error, or we just overshoot it or undershoot it or whatever it is. So that's what I would say is just don't let fear drive your life. Get out of that back seat. You got to get in the front seat. You got to drive it. Go forward with confidence and say yes. Stop saying no. We say no too much, especially our teens. Like, it's not my thing, or that's not what I do, or I'm too this or too that, or not enough of this or not enough of that. Just too much no. We're saying no too much. If it's good for your mind, for your body, for your spirit, if it's fun, adventurous, cool, the answer is yes. Period. Like it's yes. And sometimes you have to decide between two good things. That's fine. And of course you can say no. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to be like, say yes to everything, right? But I think we say no too much. And so I would say to those teens especially, like quit boxing yourself into like I'm this and not that, and just realize that this thing is the most sophisticated piece of spiritual machinery in the universe, and it can learn to do anything you consistently ask it to do. So quit saying no, say yes. So that's what I'd say.
Say yes. Say yes. When you were talking Rascal Flatts, my wish for you just started playing in my head. So I know I said that was the last question, but it is not because you are the founder of adventure-based therapy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to know how that happened, what do we do with that?
Yeah. I'll share with them. That's actually maybe a little bit of where this positive psychology comes from. But when I started my practice about 20 years ago, I started rock climbing and bouldering, because we live in this fabulous community in St. George, Utah, and it's like a little rock climbing mecca paradise for people who come from all over the world. And there's just wonderful climbing here. And it was actually a friend of mine that introduced me to it, and I just really liked it. And I decided to kind of do it on my own. And when I was up there at the Rock, is what I call it, like I thought to myself, man, I think I'm going to start bringing clients up here. And so I did. I started to bring, in fact, at that time I was working with kind of a group. It's called Country Cottage. It was like a foster care agency. And I started taking these adolescents rock climbing and bouldering, which is like free climbing, of course, all safe. Um, and I loved it and started to kind of develop, right? So from kind of bouldering, rock climbing to lead climbing, and just adding these elements that are very, very difficult. There's obviously an element of risk that's involved, but we take every possible precaution, right? And there's just all of these cool little lessons, right? But if you can just imagine, I call it my 3-in-1 therapeutic approach, right? We're outside, it's absolutely gorgeous. We're exercising, moving our bodies, learning new skills. We're, providing them with the skill that they can call their own. And then by the end of that, we're doing a little therapy too. So it's kind of my 3-in-1. But my goal isn't just to use therapy as kind of this, like, it's just a vehicle for me to communicate some like therapeutic truth or therapeutic principle. My goal really is like, no, like by the time you and I are done, you're going to be a legit climber. Like you're going to climb, like your body will transform, like your hands will like callus up, and you will learn how to climb. And so, of course, I don't do that with everyone. I do that particularly with my young adults and adolescents because they love that. Um, but it's just been such an easy way, I think, to just connect with people, right? Because therapy can be a little intimidating, right? And we as adults, we're pretty good with that, right? We can sit face to face and we can talk about objectives and goals and things like that. But teens would probably rather not be in our office. Sometimes they do. Like once they get here, they can kind of get a feel and it's good. But man, a lot of them, I should say, really just love to be outside. It's less pressure, it's less intense. And instead of this kind of therapy, it's this kind of therapy. Like we're kind of doing this and kind of doing this kind of work. It's just, so it's been something that once again it's made my practice very fun, very cool. Um, and it also changes a little bit because I see my clients throughout the community all the time. And sometimes teens will come right up to me because in a way I'm not their like therapist. I'm kind of like their climbing coach, like their climbing partner, right? Even though that's what I'm really doing with them is we're doing some work. But so
I
that's
love it.
adventure-based therapy. It's fun.
And what it sounds like is throughout your social work career, you have said yes. You have
Yeah.
said yes. You're like, I'm going to say yes to rock climbing and doing therapy. I'm going to say yes to positive psychology. I'm going to say yes to tech based support. And these are all out of the box ways of being a social worker that we didn't learn 20 years ago that you had to choose to say yes to.
Yeah. Just like you said yes to this podcast, Renita. You go, girl.
I did. Almost 100 episodes in. I said yes.
Amazing.
I did. Thank
Applaud.
you. Thank you. But
Applaud.
thank you so much, Iuri, for being here and sharing not just your words, but your heart, your work, what you're doing with SchoolPulse. This has been such a powerful reminder that consistent care, kindness, and presence can literally save lives. And for our listeners, if you would like to learn more about SchoolPulse and the work that Iuri Melo is doing, I'll make sure that I include links to all his things in the show notes, even to his books, because y'all, I'm going to be buying his books. And so I'm super excited about getting those as along with the inspiring weekly videos that I already have been blessed by that he creates. We'll make sure you guys have those links. So until next time, remember your presence, your kindness, and your voice matters. Thank you for joining the Goddesses of Social Work podcast.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Goddesses of Social Work podcast. We are glad you were here. If you liked this episode, please come back to hear more stories of the journeys through social work, and please leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. See you next time here on the Goddesses of Social Work podcast.